Hello, everyone. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. If we could just go ahead and put folks on mute as they come in so that we don't get too much interference. Just provide a second for everyone to filter in, and we'll go ahead and get started. Just one more minute here as we get a few more stragglers. Okay, well, I'll go ahead and kick us off. For starters, I just wanted to do some housekeeping items. So to speak tonight, we're going to be saving plenty of time in this meeting for you all to share your thoughts and feedback. And in order to do that, we don't have a chat or Q&A function tonight, so you're going to have to ask questions or share feedback live. And if you're joining us from a computer or a cell phone, you can do that by clicking the little reactions button that's at the bottom of your screen. It's the little smiley face with the plus. And if you click that, you'll see there's a raise hand button. So you can use that to raise your hand. And then when we get to the Q&A section, we'll call on people in the order that they raise their hand. If you are joining us from a telephone, then you can raise your hand by clicking *9 on your phone's dial pad to raise your hand. And then when we call on you, you can click *6 to unmute and ask your question or share your comment. So I want to start by introducing all the folks who are here with me tonight. So I'm First District Supervisor Manu Koenig. I also have with me here tonight from our planning department, Stephanie Hansen. Stephanie, if you could just maybe just say hi so that folks see your screen highlighted.
Hi, everybody.
Thanks, Stephanie. Yeah, Stephanie is our principal planner with sustainability and special projects in the planning department. We also have Amelia Conlin, project manager from Ecology Action.
Hi, folks.
Russell Chen, active transportation engineer with the Department of Public Works with the county.
Hi, everyone.
Steve Wiesner, our assistant director of Public Works with the county.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, Steve. And Christina Glavis, first district analyst in my office.
Hello.
And Amy Miyakusu, another analyst in my office.
Hi, everyone.
Great. And if you could go ahead and start the slides, Amy.
Slides.
And go to the next slide with the agenda. Great. So I just wanted to thank you all for coming out tonight. And I want to emphasize that I'm here tonight to listen to you, as are the county staff and project staff who are here to joining me. We're not here to try to convince you of anything, and any background information that we share is really just to provide context for how this project came about and where we can go from here and how we can move forward. I want to apologize that this meeting couldn't be in person. It was really my goal to do so. We wanted to do it somewhere close to Pleasure Point so it would be accessible. And junior guards had booked up Simpkins Swim Center until later in this evening. I felt it was going to be too late. And ultimately trying to continue to accommodate the meetings that we've gotten used to during COVID and the pandemic. We wanted to do a hybrid meeting, and it was a little bit difficult to pull together all the necessary technology. And so that's why we decided to do an all virtual meeting so it'd be as easy as possible for everyone to participate. I will say that starting in August, all of the Board of Supervisors meetings will be hybrid, so you can join us either in person or via Zoom, as will all of the constituent meetings that I hold. So looking forward to seeing you in person again. As we get into the pop-up itself, I want to emphasize that this project is temporary. It's coming out on the 21st of July as soon as we can complete the traffic counts. And I'll say that if you don't like the changes, I hope you'll come to realize it's a good thing we tested them out like this before making anything permanent. Nothing that you see on the ground today is permanent. The Popup project was implemented using really the plan of record that we have. This is the latest plan that was created during the last round of community input. And Stephanie Hansen, in agenda item 2 here, will go a little bit more into that and explain how we got to the plan that we've got right now. I know that many of you didn't participate in creating that plan, and I think the fact that so many people have become more involved as a result of this test is a benefit to doing tests rather than just sitting around the table and talking about things forever and ever. What catalyzed the pop-up is that we had an opportunity via a grant from the state for our active transportation plan. And Amelia Conlon will speak a little bit more about that process in the 3rd agenda item here. And so along with that state grant, we had the opportunity to do a trial, and seeing as nothing had happened with the Portola streetscapes concepts for a couple of years, we thought it would be a good opportunity to actually put it to the test and see what worked and what didn't. I will just say that we're seeing the feedback as well as the physical impact from this project. Both myself and my staff have responded to a lot of calls and a lot of questions. And I think that's part of the benefit of doing the test. I've heard from so many people. And we're also seeing some of the physical impacts on the ground. So we're seeing that there's queuing at the intersections, and that's telling us that if we're going to do anything even incrementally, we're really going to have to fix the intersections at 38th Avenue and 41st Avenue at the same time that we make, same time or before we make any changes to the street. We've also seen that adding street parking in front of the empty lumber yard or public storage isn't particularly useful for people, and maybe we should time that any changes with changes in the use of the actual businesses that are there. And I just want to assure you that we've heard your frustrations with the project, from traffic to cut-throughs in the neighborhood to just the appearance of some of the temporary installations. And we recognize that the temporary nature of the implementation has caused some confusion. So those I just wanted to share that we have heard those things, I have heard those things, and we'll have plenty more time during this meeting to share more after we just give a little bit of background information. And I hope that tonight you'll listen and get an understanding of where we were coming from with the project, share your thoughts. Really what we want to know is what elements of this plan should we carry forward, if any? What is either confusing because of the temporary nature? What do you want to see continue to be worked on and implemented in the future? And we'll focus on ultimately there's limited resources in the county, and we're going to focus on the improvements and benefits that people want to see, and we're certainly going to leave behind anything that people don't want. So with that, I will turn it over to Stephanie Hansen to talk about the 2018 Portola streetscape concept. And take it away, Stephanie.
Great, thank you. So we wanted to start today by talking a little bit about the planning background that preceded the demonstration project and was part of the foundation that influenced the project. Back in 2016, the Board of Supervisors directed the planning department, working with Public Works and Economic Development, to engage the community in some design guidance for future development in the commercial area at Pleasure Point. And there was a particular focus on Portola Drive as a corridor. And this resulted in the Pleasure Point Commercial Corridor Vision and Design Guidelines and the streetscape concept for Portola Drive. Next slide. So this slide shows, it's pretty big up on my screen anyway, but the blue area shows the study area for looking at circulation on Portola Drive and for the vision and design guidelines. We're pretty focused on, rather than 41st, but pretty focused on Portola Drive with this project and in some of our upcoming implementation. But the idea in general was to accommodate all modes of travel, to create a more walkable, functional community that improves safety for pedestrians and cyclists and address some issues there. So this slide is showing the geographical study area for the Pleasure Point plan and Portola plan from 26th to 41st on Portola Drive, and then along 41st from Portola Drive up north to the railroad. Next slide. The planning process for the commercial corridor plan included a robust community input process. There were lots of discussions on a vision for the area, design principles for future development, and improvements to the streetscape. There were several stakeholder meetings in which we got input from residents and property owners, community organizations, business owners, local architects, and public agencies on issues and opportunities in the area. There were 3 really well attended community workshops in 2017 and 2018. For the first one, we had nearly 150 people there. This was an interactive workshop to identify existing assets and challenges and opportunities and create a draft vision. The second workshop had over 140 people attending. This was to kind of brainstorm, work through the emerging vision for the plan and the draft design concepts, including the streetscape concept. And then a third workshop had over 75 people attend, and that was associated with a community survey that had over 270 responses in it. Some of the feedback we got at the meetings was support for a walkable community, with wider sidewalks and pedestrian crossings, support for buffered or protected bike lanes, addressing safety and concerns with speed along Portola Drive was a real concern. So was delivery trucks that block traffic when making deliveries to the some of the commercial properties. There was a discussion about what types of improvements would be better. For instance, at the intersections, would it be better to do a signal maybe at 41st or a roundabout? Lots of discussion about more trees and landscaping, how to accommodate more parking and safer parking, evaluating options for change in the number of lanes out there, which I'll discuss in the next slide, and access for emergency vehicles. The Board of Supervisors accepted the plan in December of 2018 and directed elements of the plan to be folded into the upcoming sustainability update for the to the county's general plan and county code, which is a big project that's in process, and we'll be gathering more public involvement in the winter and spring of this year and next year. Next slide. So the streetscape plan for Portola Drive emerged out of these meetings. There were near-term concepts for possible improvements and then long-term permanent design concepts. And it really reimagined the streetscape in 3 segments, Eastern, Middle, and Western. This graphic shows the long-term vision for the Eastern segment between 41st and 38th. The proposed concept includes realigning Portola Drive to have 1 driving lane in each direction and a middle turn lane to facilitate turning movements, as well as those truck deliveries that I mentioned before. This allows for additional on-street parking, safer bicycle facilities that are buffered from traffic, with the potential of bike boxes at intersections, safer pedestrian crosswalks, wider sidewalks, and improved landscaping. Some of the benefits of this kind of a different street treatment is that it calms traffic down, moves it a little bit slower so that it's safer for pedestrians and bicycles in all modes of traffic. It improves room for transit, improves circulation, and is better for safety of pedestrians. And allows room for additional street trees to create that more walkable feeling. So the potential roadway improvements that are in the plan are still part of that sustainability update. The planning department was directed to evaluate the intersection improvements and the concepts that are included in this plan as part of the sustainability update, and kind of look at what other improvements needed to happen, including the associated intersection improvements in the upcoming environmental document. So that's about where we are right now. And with that, I will turn it back over.
Thank you, Stephanie. Next up, we've got Amelia Conlon, who's the project manager with Ecology Action.
Great, thank you. Thanks everyone for being here tonight, and thanks for having me. Again, my name is Amelia Conlon, and I'm the project manager for the county's Active Transportation Plan project. And I'm here to share a little bit of background on that project and some information on how the Portola installation came about. So the Active Transportation Plan is a 2-year process, and it's a partnership between the County of Santa Cruz Public Works and Public Health Departments. Ecology Action is supporting the project as project manager, and Bike Santa Cruz County is supporting the project with outreach throughout the planning process. And we're also working with Copenhagenize as a consultant on the project, and they're a design and planning firm that is helping out with our infrastructure recommendations, as well as the design for the Portola installation. So this 2-year process, when it's completed, will result in a master plan for future bike and pedestrian projects throughout the unincorporated county for areas like Davenport, Live Oak, Aptos, and the communities outside of Watsonville. So we'll have a big long list of projects like new bike facilities, new sidewalks, and pedestrian improvements at intersections. And the Active Transportation Plan will also serve as a vision for the future of walking and biking in the unincorporated county and help the county set goals on what they want to achieve around walking and biking. And the plan will also help the county prioritize between projects on that project list. There's always too many projects and not enough funding to go around. So this plan will act as a tool that the county can use to set priorities going forward. And we're also hoping that the Active Transportation Plan helps the county secure funding to construct some of these projects permanently. It can often be helpful with grant applications if you've done this type of planning work. And so the goal is to bring in additional funding to build projects on a permanent basis. And this 2-year process, of which the Portola installation is a part, was funded through a grant from the state of California through Caltrans, as well as local matching funds. Next slide. So here is the timeline for the overall project. We kicked off the Active Transportation Plan at the beginning of last year and held the public outreach phase of the project in fall of 2020. We held 3 virtual community meetings to get input from the community on barriers that people have to walking and biking safely now, and the types of projects that they would like to see included in the Active Transportation Plan. We were also out at 22 in-person tabling events in parks and in neighborhoods. We definitely shifted our outreach strategy due to COVID, but trying to meet people where they are to hear about what safety issues they experience while trying to walk and bike around the county. We also hosted a project website with an online survey and an interactive online map where people could make comments. And that outreach process resulted in nearly 1,400 comments from the community about places where people would like to see improvements for walking and biking. Over this past spring and into the summer, we've turned that list of community comments into a list of draft recommendations, and we continue to work on that process. And so these are recommendations for things like new bike facilities, new pedestrian improvements, and have come out of the issues that were identified during that community outreach process. And then part of our grant scope of work included installing a few of those draft recommendations on a temporary basis. And so that's the temporary installation that you see on Portola Drive. So we're in that process now. And over the rest of the summer, we'll be finishing up the recommendations and writing the draft plan. There will be an opportunity for the public to review that draft plan and make comments. And we expect the final plan to come before the Board of Supervisors in early 2022. Next slide. So the goal of these two temporary installations that were included as part of the Active Transportation Plan project was to test out a few of the recommendations from the Active Transportation Plan on a temporary basis and get feedback from the community on whether they would like to see these changes be made permanent. We selected two locations to try out these temporary demonstrations. One was Green Valley Road outside of the city of Watsonville near Pinto Lake City Park. And we installed a temporary protected biking and walking path on one side of the roadway there. And the other project, the other location selected was Portola Drive. And both Portola and Green Valley were selected because we heard a large number of comments from the community about the need for safer walking and biking along these corridors. And Portola Drive was also selected because of the previous planning work that had been done on the 2018 streetscape study. And knowing that this is a big change for Portola, we decided to test it out on a temporary basis and get feedback before moving forward with any additional steps. We certainly have lessons learned on how to get the word out to the community more effectively and let people know that these projects are coming. We did notice all of the business owners on Portola Drive and get information out through the Pleasure Point Business Association to let business owners know. We handed out notices to residents between 30th Avenue and 41st Avenue, shared information on social media through Supervisor Koenig's online newsletter. But one lesson learned for future projects is about a week into this Portola project, we installed the electronic message board sign as drivers are approaching 36th, letting people know that there's a new stop sign ahead, the road is going to look different. That's something we could have done earlier to notify not just the residents and business owners of Portola, but everyone who drives through that corridor. So that was a lesson learned for us. Next slide. And so I've heard a lot of comments about the differences between what people see out there on Portola right now and the plan that was that came out of the 2018 planning process. And so I wanted to speak a little bit to that. One major difference between this project and the corridor plan is that we're using temporary materials that look very different than they would if this project were to be installed permanently. We've heard from folks that the pink and purple at the intersections is confusing. If those were installed permanently, they would be curb extensions, basically an extension of the sidewalk at the curb. So meant to shorten the crossing distance for pedestrians and make people more visible when they're waiting to cross the street. The wave delineators that you see out there separating the bike lane from the motor vehicle lane would probably look something like the plastic posts that you see at the wharf roundabout in Santa Cruz, separating the bike path from the travel lane, or on Water Street in Santa Cruz. They've recently installed separated bikeways using a white plastic post to separate the bike lane. So that's what it would look like if this project were to be installed on a permanent basis. The things that are the same between the temporary installation and the 2018 Portola Streetscape study are the change to one lane in each direction with a center turn lane. There were some aspects of that plan that we were not able to install on a temporary basis, like the wider sidewalk, the street trees, and the back-in angled parking. Were not things that we were able to include in the temporary demonstration. And we also wanted to test out one change with this project. So the 2018 streetscape plan calls for buffered bike lanes, which are located between the parking and the motor vehicle lanes. And we wanted to test out the idea of installing separated bikeways on this corridor. where the bike lane is adjacent to the curb and has some kind of physical barrier between the bike lane and moving traffic. And we wanted to test these out because separated bikeways have been shown to decrease collisions, improve safety for people who are biking, and also to encourage new cyclists, people who have kids, who are younger or older, or are just less confident cyclists, tend to feel more comfortable if there's some kind of physical barrier between them and moving traffic. So one of our goals for this project was to test out that change and get feedback from the community on whether that's something you'd like to see move forward. Next slide. So with that, I will just say that thank you for everyone who has given their feedback, who has given us a call, sent us an email, taken the survey and left your comments. We definitely hear you and are reviewing all of that survey data. And if you haven't already, would encourage you to go to ecoact.org/poweredbyme and add your 2 cents about things that you like and things that you don't like about this project. We really appreciate you taking the time to give input. And with that, I will turn it over to Russell Chen from the county.
Hi, everyone. My name is Russell Chen. I'm with the County of Santa Cruz Public Works. And we're going to be getting some feedback here. We're going to be collecting a lot of valuable data as part of these pop-up projects. And the data that we're going to be collecting are vehicles, bikes, and pedestrians. We're going to be doing our first survey starting the week of July 12th, and that's during the event. And we're starting that on the 12th, which is after the 4th of July weekend here, which kind of throws traffic patterns off. So we're waiting a week and doing our first survey then. And then we'll do once the pop-up project is taken down, we'll do our second survey, which would be after the July 26th, kind of let traffic normalize again and see what the traffic volumes are like. And so the things that we're going to be collecting are traffic counts, travel time through this area. We'll also collect speed and then some peak hour traffic counts. And so we'll be able to compare the results during the event and then after event. And this will give us some valuable data. And so next slide, please. So for future planning, we're definitely going to be doing some traffic studies. That'll include some traffic modeling software to model operational effects and traffic impacts. So, and then we'll be able to compare this information with the data we collect to just have some, compare some of the theoretical modeling with the real-time data or real data that we collected out in the streets. So this will help guide our decisions in the future. And we're definitely going to have some intersection improvements, or definitely look at some intersection improvements, such as like roundabouts and signals. So those are all the things that we're going to be looking at, and we'll also consider all the comments that come in to help kind of drive our decisions. So definitely provide comments. We'll definitely be taking all that in consideration. Let's see, that's all I have. And thank you again for having me, and thank you guys for coming.
Thank you very much, Russell. And now we're going to shift into the feedback section of the webinar. Actually, Amy, if you could leave those slides up, I just want to go to the FAQ that we, I think it's a slide there. It was next. Do you have, there you go. Great. Before we take your questions, I just wanted to address some of the common things that we've heard and get those out of the way. So the first thing is that the installation will become permanent, whether we like it or not. That's absolutely not the case. As you heard Amelia say, we have scarce resources to do projects like this in the county. And so certainly as your supervisor, I'm not interested in seeing a project that nobody likes. We want to make sure that if this project does move forward, it's in a way that people do like it. So there's no foregone conclusion here, and we really do mean it when we want to hear from you what you think of this particular project, both through the survey and tonight. Traffic. We do recognize that there's been traffic impacts and backups at the intersections. And as Russell said, the next step is for us to look at, do a more complete traffic study and evaluate the impacts of any future changes to Portola. And as I mentioned before, that definitely includes intersection improvements, definitely at 41st and Portola, as well as potentially at 38th. And I'll just say, actually this has been done a couple other places in the county, notably in the city of Santa Cruz, both on Soquel Drive and Morrissey. And they kind of started off with a design like we've implemented in the test here. And ultimately they decided to keep the queuing at the intersection with the full lane, or with 2 lanes, and then only in other parts reduce it down to 1 lane. They also made the decision to move the bike lane, rather than being internal next to the sidewalk, external again. So, those are some of the simple things we could do to try to address traffic going forward in a future iteration. 3, there was nothing wrong with Portola before. That's not entirely true. We do see more above average number of accidents with bikes and pedestrians along Portola Drive. And there are also frequently issues with speeding along this corridor. And that's what led to pursuing a project like this in the first place. And of course, we also see issues with parking that we were hoping to address in this project or a future project. The pink and purple at intersections and wave delineators are confusing. We definitely hear that. And I think as Amelia explained, those are really temporary measures. We couldn't build the pink and purple intersections. That was meant to symbolize areas where there would actually be a bulb out or a sidewalk area that would shorten the intersection for pedestrians. Obviously, we couldn't do that on a pop-up that's just going to last a few weeks. And so we used the paint instead. And I understand that temporary color has been confusing for folks. Also, the wave delineators, those sort of things that mark the bike lane, those are also a temporary measure. If we were to do a protected bike lane in the future, they would be more like the posts that you see along Water Street down in Santa Cruz or along the wharf. Emergency vehicles are not able to get through this road. Obviously we want to make sure emergency vehicles are able to get through, and we haven't heard any issues from emergency services that this is a problem. So there's no reason to think emergency vehicles won't be able to get through. And then this is not what was voted for in the Pleasure Point corridor study. As explained, this is really the best we were able to implement as far as a temporary version of the Pleasure Point corridor study. And our goal here tonight is to understand, now that you've been able to experience them in person, if you changed your mind about them, or if maybe you weren't involved in the work that went into the Pleasure Point corridor study and streetscape concepts, and you're being involved now. Well, that's great. It's a great time for us to hear from you. And really the biggest difference between the streetscape concepts and the corridor study and what we've got in the temporary installation is those buffered versus protected bike lanes, which there's some data to support. And we want to know, whether you would prefer to go back to a buffered bike lane concept in a future iteration, or if you just like them the way they are today. And so before I take questions, I want to just launch a short poll. We've got about 100 people here, and we want to make sure we get some feedback from everyone. So I'm going to launch this poll. It's just 7 questions. And if you could just take a few minutes to answer, that would be great. And we'll use that data in future planning efforts.
Are you kidding me?
And then, as you get through that, or if you go ahead and you can start raising your hands for questions. You can do that if you're logging in from a computer using the reactions button at the bottom of your screen. It's the smiley face with a plus sign on it. If you click that, you'll see an option to raise your hand. You can click the raise hand button. And if you're calling in from a telephone, hit *9 to raise your hand. And then when we call on you, you can unmute using *6.
Hey, your Zoom room is too small. There's people that can't make it in.
I'm really sorry to hear that. We actually used a different account with the goal of being able to make sure more people could get in. That does explain why we're stuck at 100 participants. This is being recorded, and we'll post the recording. I don't think there's anything we can do right now to change that. So we'll post the recording, and we'll continue to take feedback both through the survey that's posted online, ecoact.org/powered-by-me, and you can also email the First District office, first.district@santacruzcounty.us. Just a few more seconds here to let folks finish up the survey, and then we'll go to questions. All right, I'll leave the poll open so you can keep answering if you like, and let's start taking some questions. And if you could go ahead and end the slides. And I'll start with the folks as you're queued up here. So Lynn Simpson, you are first. Go ahead.
I think I am unmuted.
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Thank you for taking questions. I have several, but I know there are lots of people who want to ask questions, so I'll limit it to one. When and where will the survey results be published for everyone to see? And can you give us a feeling right now for what the survey results are? Thank you.
Yeah, we haven't discussed how we want to make those public, but certainly in the interest of transparency, I'd be happy to publish the results in my newsletter or on a public website somewhere. I would say that we have heard from more people who are frustrated with the implementation than are happy with it. And so I would say that the majority of feedback we've gotten is frustration. Next question, John Dawson. Go ahead. You had your hand up, but now I think it...
That was for the Zoom limit meeting. Yeah,
Oh.
I could say, I don't know if you've driven through Soquel Village during traffic hour, but it's pretty bad with one lane going north. So we've all seen how much traffic there is on Portola now.
The Soquel section I was referring to is actually within the city of Santa Cruz, right in front of the the Buttery Bakery over there.
Yeah, that's pretty good, actually.
So
No, I'm talking in SoCal Village by Aldo.
definitely we know SoCal Village is a problem too. And there's a significant amount of funding we recently received to make some big improvements there, including timing the intersections so that the street lights are all working in unison and it's faster for people to get through there.
How do I raise my hand?
You can raise your hand, clicking the reactions button at the bottom of the screen. It's the little smiley face with a plus. And then you click on that and there's a raise hand button. If you're calling in from a phone, it's *9. And then when we call on you, it's *6 to unmute. All right, next up, I've got John Courgette.
Just an observation. A couple of the slides that you showed something like 10 or 11 cars and 1 or 2 bicycles. Sometimes I wonder if we shouldn't just have a whole separate system to take care of bicycles as opposed to restricting traffic like we were doing for the few people that ride bikes. Anyway, just an observation. Thank you.
Thanks for the observation, John. Certainly we are looking at putting a trail in on the rail corridor, but other than that, we've got to figure out how to fit all uses on the streets with a few exceptions, but thank you for the observation. Next up, I've got Michael Ford.
Hey, just wanted to say, first of all, thank you for being really responsive throughout this process. I think your office has handled what is probably very chaotic experience really well, a really quick response, and that as a practicing architect, I understand what you're trying to do, and I totally agree with the overall vision for the 41st and Portola corridor. But it seems as though this is probably weighing bike traffic a little heavier than what is actually existing, especially in context of the rail trail and East Cliff and all that. And that it is important for traffic to sort of maintain a significant flow through Portola just to get across town. And frankly, in this context, it seems like it might be more appropriate to start looking at upzoning and changing zoning for the parcels along 41st in order to establish the uses that would then support a slower traffic pattern. It seems a little bit of a cart before the horse or a build it and they will come kind of attitude. So as of right now, it seems like the program is addressing a demand that's not there. But I really applaud the efforts and look forward to seeing what comes out of this meeting. So thanks for your work.
Yeah, thanks for that comment, Michael. It's definitely something that I've noticed as well. Like I said, as far as putting parking in front of a storage facility or the empty lumber yard, it's clear that we can't necessarily build it and they will come. Although certainly part of the idea was, we've got businesses doing the outdoor seating. Is there anything else that we can do with the streetscape in the short term to help drive more interest in the area and get people to come down there and help the local businesses? So that was the vision. The reality is a little different. We certainly appreciate your comments. And I will say that, the planning document was created with some of those changes in use in mind. So thank you.
Well, thanks again. I appreciate it.
David Dean.
Yes, thank you for the time here. I wanted to state that I have a strong preference for the protected bike lanes over the buffered lanes. It's just so much safer for cyclists. I also have a question about this comment about adding more parking. That seems to be counterintuitive to what you're trying to do here, and we're trying to make it easier for people to get there without bringing their cars. So adding more parking just incentivizes more cars. Would it not make more sense to maybe do some things along the lines of reducing parking and adding more public transit options?
Yeah, I appreciate that, Michael. David. We're definitely looking at more public transit options and ways to increase the frequency of Metro on Portola. I think that in this case, the cars, the parking on Portola, it's just sometimes people are more likely to stop if they can quickly and easily park on the street. And so we're exploring that. And of course, those cars are also doubling as part of the barrier between the bikes and the street in this case. And so that's why they were incorporated in this particular design. If you noticed in the poll that I shared, certainly there's the option of, that we could look at in the future of keeping Portola 4 lanes, having some kind of either buffered or protected bike lane, but then we would not be able to do the on-street parking. There's just not space for everything. So that's certainly an option we can look at in the future. Great question. Joanne Allen, you're next. You're still on mute, Joanne.
Because I forgot to push the button. Thank you, Manu. So you didn't hear my accolades for you, so I have to say them again. Thank you, Manu, for all of this and what you've been doing and your staff for presenting this. I do have a couple questions, but I also have some comments, if that's okay. And I'm gonna, first the question is, can I take the survey again? I took it once, but I have other comments. Can I take it again to add some additional things that I've experienced and some other suggestion? Is that possible to do the survey twice?
I think with the survey that's up, yeah, there's nothing that limits you from taking it.
Okay, because it evolves and changes. And also, there's been a lot of commentary on Nextdoor, as people know, and about this project. And I hope that the people that were making comments took the survey or have contacted all of these wonderful people on this call here. But one person stated, I think you would have your answer if you read the threads on Nextdoor, they would see this is not a success. And I went, well, really? Maybe. So here's what I did, being the grant writer researcher that I am, Manu. I took it upon myself to tally up every single comment and every single thing from Nextdoor. And there were 714 comments and 1,475 reactions. And of those, there were 417 unduplicated individuals commenting about this project, and of which 106 resided in Pleasure Point. So it kind of gives you a feel, like a lot of people not living in Pleasure Point were commenting on this. And of the 472, so this is on a record being recorded, that's why I'm saying it, 74% or 349 did not show support for the project up until today. I kept adding and tallying. And 26% or 123 showed support of the project. But they wanted some slightly tweaked things, as we're talking about here, or some other things happening to it, because it didn't meet what they thought, or they didn't think it was like the plan. Of the 106 that are actual residents of Pleasure Point, 81% or 86 did not support the project. 19% or 20 did. Those are just the people talking on Nextdoor. I know there's a whole bunch of other people that aren't on Nextdoor, but I didn't want those comments to be ignored. And I also shared with those folks that you really need not just to vent on Nextdoor and not just to talk amongst yourselves. You really need to contact you, Manu, or do the survey or whatever it is they need to do. And I have a list of suggestions that I'm not going to talk about here. I'm going to take the survey again. I'm not going to waste time. But my feeling is change is inevitable. It's going to happen. I've lived here 67 years. I've seen a lot. I've lived here all my life. I wasn't too thrilled about East Cliff. Now I love East Cliff. This one got me riled up a little bit as a neighbor, but we can't stop change. It's inevitable, but we can ensure it doesn't cause grief for a lot of people, that it's going to improve the life for everyone, for the cyclists, the walkers, the strollers, the families, and the people who drive cars like me, that I will never ride a bike. I'm not going to go into that story, but I walk and I drive my car. So thank you for your time. And I hope everybody responds, even the people that like it, that have tweaks, so that this really can be a true improvement for everyone that lives in Pleasure Point. And I've walked Portola all of my life, and I've seen it up, down, and all around. And if anybody wants to, I wrote a little memoir on Nextdoor about my life here living in our wonderful point. So thank you for the time.
Thank you very much, Joanne. Yeah, I would love to see those statistics again. I wasn't able to write them all down. Maybe
I'll send them to you.
I'd love to review them. And as I said, we acknowledge, oh, that's perfect. Thank you. We acknowledge the project is not perfect, and we're learning a lot from it. And as I said, that's one of the benefits of doing it on a temporary basis like this is, you know, rather than hardscaping everything and having it stuck for a year and spending $1 million, you know, if we've just spent a few thousand and we can learn what the problems are and then either change it or take it away.
Oh, I forgot to ask my second question. I just wanted to ask Russell, when he's doing this, I'm so glad you're doing a traffic survey. I'm sorry I did this. The thing that would be interesting is to count the traffic in the avenues, because that's where it's increased. I don't know if you can do that, because with this, it's increased in the avenues this way. And also if you can study the cyclists and pedestrians that are using it as well. So that's my only other question, comment.
Yeah, we're definitely counting the pedestrian and bicyclists. You know, that's part of the ATP, or active transportation plan, is to count the peds and bikes and compare the before and after. And then we can take a look at the side streets that you're talking about and include that into the counts.
Yeah, great. We'll definitely look at that. I think those forced right-hand turn lanes have been a little bit problematic. Recognize that. Next, Justin Flood.
Thank you. So it's kind of a comment, kind of a question. So just a little background. I live on 30th. I've got 2 young kids. We frequent a lot of the businesses on the street, including, you know, June Bugs, Cat and Cloud, the Dunlop Donuts. And we've been biking as a family on that, you know, on Portola. So as is pre-changes. One of the things that we have stopped doing is biking there is because all the changes have created a lot of frustration. And I find that frustrated drivers are actually making it worse for cyclists, especially people that are trying to turn onto Portola from the side streets, because they now have to inch out even further because of the way the lanes are. And so you're going to get a skewed count, because I know there's other people and other basically our friends groups who have kids around the same age are purposely avoiding, you know, doing our morning trip to Cat and Cloud on our bikes because of frustrated drivers. We just don't feel safe taking our kids there. So just keep that in mind when you're doing that. The other comment I would put out there is I would highly stress that we need to make sure we don't reduce the amount of traffic travel, because all the other roads in the area that are traveling the same direction are 1 lane. So Bromer, Capitola, et cetera, right? And in those areas. And it just, I also drive on the street, and it creates a lot of frustration, you basically restricting traffic in that way. So thank you.
Thank you, Justin. Yeah, of course, that's exactly the opposite of what we were hoping for. You know, we want you and your family to feel safer on Portola. And so we'll definitely be reevaluating the project based on your feedback. Next up, I've got Mary Scheller. Mary, if you could unmute yourself.
Hi, thanks, Manu. So I don't have any questions. I just have a few comments. You know, I think the rendering was a beautiful architectural graphic, but I don't think it's grounded in reality. I think, as several people have said, there's many more cars than pedestrians and walkers on Portola. I also feel Portola right now does not have the street-facing businesses to support this vision. So I feel like we're putting the cart before the horse. Let's look to develop Portola with retail and residential and commercial first, and then build it to be this beautiful streetscape with trees and wider sidewalks and all that, which would be wonderful. I've lived here for years. I'd love to see that happen. I also recognize, again, as other people have said, that Portola is a major conduit between Santa Cruz and Capitola. And the pop-up concept really created congestion It made businesses less accessible. I mean, some of the businesses I went to, I stopped going to because I didn't want to have to worry about turning or driving or hitting somebody or figuring out what was going on with the bike lanes. So that ingress and egress from those limited businesses was actually becoming problematic. And it was creating a situation that really funneled traffic, myself in a vehicle or on foot, to the side streets. I found myself actually turning onto side streets I never went on before because of the congestion. So I was using side streets in East Cliff a lot more. And then finally, I would say I'm not on social media. So if I hadn't had an email from the Pleasure Point community, I would never have known about this event. I'm a resident. We've lived here a long time off of 26th Avenue. There were no mailers. There was nothing in the newspaper. There was nothing for people who aren't on Nextdoor or other platforms. So I would encourage you in the future to also think about us residents who are not as digitally connected when you do these. Thank you.
Thank you very much for all those comments, Mary. Steve Walker, you're next.
Here. Yes, I just rode through the pop-up area. That's why I was sort of late to the meeting. I figured that it's nice for bicyclists. I've went through there twice. I've had no issues. I did notice some car blow through the new stop sign at didn't even think about stopping at the new intersection. What is it, at 36th, I think? I know that I've used that intersection before the pop-up went up, and it's lots of fun at 41st and Portola trying to get through that intersection, because everybody's like trying to get through the intersection, trying to figure out who has the right of way to drive through or make a left or make a right or whatever. My question is that there has been a traffic survey done prior to this, and what was the average speed of cars driving through on Portola between 41st and 30th? Do you know anything about that?
Russell?
Yeah, there was actually not a traffic survey done beforehand. This is actually supposedly for an active transportation, so we're collecting ped and bike. But since we realize there's some traffic issues here, we're collecting also the vehicle traffic data during the event, and we'll do it after the event.
Nothing before, like speed bumps, or I mean not speed bumps, but you know how they have those little lines that go across the that count cars, and some of them count the weight of the car and the weight and the speed of the car as it drives through. Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah, we didn't do any of those beforehand.
I see. Okay. Well, that's it. Mad props to the person that put in double lines at Twin Lakes on East Cliff. By Twin Lakes, there's a nice little curve there. I rode by there today. Last week it wasn't there. Today there was. Someone decided to put in double white lines on the bike lane going down towards up towards 7th Avenue. I think it is. Yeah, it was nice. Thank you very much for whoever did that.
You're welcome, Steve. Glad you appreciate that. That was something that Russell and I worked on as well. And I appreciate the suggestion to get the speed of cars going through there. I will definitely try to integrate that into some of the data we collect, and maybe we can get one of those sheriff speed measures that you mentioned from the sheriff of the CHP. So thank you. Next, I have IP.
I don't have a hand thing.
And if you're having trouble raising your hand, it's at the bottom of your screen. There's the.
There isn't. Not on mine. There isn't.
All right, Barbara, why don't you go ahead and ask your question then?
Thank you. I'm really liking the flashing lights at the crosswalks in this area, and I only think there's one. And also, I think there definitely should be lights at 41st and Portola. regular traffic lights where you have to stop, where pedestrians know they can walk. I mean, it's so basic that I think that would improve things a great deal. And I don't know what the bicycle laws are in this town. Are they cars or are they pedestrians?
Oh, they are bikes. They're sort of their own class.
Yeah. Well, when they cross, do they have to stop and get off their bike and walk their bike across the pedestrian walkway there? Or they can just jump out like they do and get right in front of your car.
Right, they do need to obey traffic laws.
They don't.
Yeah, so those need to be put out again, seriously. For kids, you have kids that are off now for the summer and they're just all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously I drive, so that's why I'm bringing it up.
Got it. Yeah, we need everyone needs to obey the rules of the road if it's going to work out there. I appreciate your comment about the flashing crosswalks. We are going to install 7 more throughout the next year, including another on Portola East Cliff, actually down at the 14th.
Those are great because they really alert people ahead of time that there's a stop sign. Otherwise, they may not even see it.
I'm glad you appreciate that.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thanks for your comment. IP, you have the floor if you're there. And seeing no one, I'll move on to Goodwin.
Oh, hello.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Dave. How are you?
Oh, hey, Dave.
I'm on 36th Avenue and I want to offer a few comments. I take my boat in and go fishing. And when you come with those purple kind of turnouts, even without a boat, when you're turning onto these streets, like coming down Portola and taking a right-hand turn, it makes you go into oncoming traffic coming up 36th Avenue. I mean, it makes you do that with a big truck. And my truck's not huge, but with a boat trailer, I had to swing all the way in the other lane in order to manipulate that turn. So if this goes forward, I think those kinds of things really need to be looked at. I know there's all kinds of rules with radiuses for trailers and fire department trucks to get down things. And all the roadways should comply with that. And so whatever ends up coming out of this, I hope that occurs because it's an unsafe situation. The other comment I have is I know the Pleasure Point plan was kind of the one I saw the architectural thing on. That was kind of good. I like the idea of moving bike lanes over towards the curb, and then they're not having people open car doors in front of them when they're riding down a bike lane. So throwing that in there, but that's kind of a good idea. I heard the guy from the county planning department, he was kind of conveying some stuff. And I'm just really curious, this has been up for how long now, the pop-up?
It was completed on the 25th.
So he has not even started a traffic study until I think he said next week. So I think that's really lost a lot of foresight on what's going on before the event. And he should have somebody should have done traffic before the event, at the start of the event, the middle of the event, the end of the event, and after. So I really think that kind of missed the boat on just studying traffic. I avoid 41st Avenue now. I go down arterial streets because of what's going on around here. So now I'm in other neighborhoods that probably haven't seen the traffic. And I'm surprised if you haven't heard from them yet. But those things should be taken into account and we'll just see what happens from there. But I appreciate you taking my time.
Thanks, Dave. Yes, we definitely have heard from those neighbors who are seeing you now.
But it's a safety condition where you're taking a turn and those delineators and the purple things cause you to go into oncoming traffic coming from the other direction. And that's happening every day. I mean, there's going to be some accidents and I'm surprised there haven't been already. And you want to avoid those.
I hear you. I'm trying to navigate the area with a boat, and definitely into account as far as
Look, thanks for your time.
Yeah, thank you very much. Good. And just to the point about the traffic study, we are going to do one on regular conditions after the end of the study, so that we get a sense of how traffic moves through there, through Portola when there is no change.
Yeah, it would have been nice to do that beforehand.
I agree. That would have been a little better.
Yeah.
Goodwin, you are up next.
Yeah, thank you. Well, first of all, I want to compliment you on the vision that you've had for this, and I love Ecology Action, and I love a lot of what the projects have been. And I'm both a biker and I'm a commuter, and I live in the neighborhood off 30th for many years. So I've loved, what I've seen over in on Water Street. I thought that was fantastic. I felt very safe over there once that went up. So I want to say, as a commuter, this is a regular commute that I have, that because I'm a teacher in Watsonville and I do this commute every day that I'm working. I go through Portola, down through Capitola, and out to Watsonville. And I can say, just as IP and a couple other people have mentioned, I'm not going to be in that count that you have now, because I figured my own traffic count was like something like last week, because I'm doing summer school, there was like 2 days coming home. I spent an extra 3 minutes sitting in traffic trying to get home, which was extremely frustrating because of the single lanes that merge now, that you've taken away the lanes there that flowed well. So now I also, like many people in the neighborhood, am in search of other places to try to get around the whole area. So it sort of defeats the purpose for a lot of us in the community, that now we don't want to use the area because it's just too clogged up and it takes too long to get through, and it's so frustrating. I don't know what your solution is for the bikers. I hear about, I didn't feel unsafe going through it, but I'm an adult biker. So it's a little bit different when you got kids and family and the whole route that way, that you want something different. So I would strongly, encourage you guys to relook at the traffic flow and how the single lanes now in both directions are clogging the traffic in there. And that would be my suggestion.
Thank you for the suggestion, and definitely, as I said, we want you to be out there, want you to want to go to Portola and use the street either as a cyclist or as in a car. So we will update the plan based on this feedback. Thanks very much for sharing.
Thank you.
Mr. Phillip.
Good afternoon or good evening, Manu and neighbors. So I've lived in this neighborhood 20 plus years. I've been coming in this neighborhood for probably 40 years. So my opinion, I would like to see a moratorium on these types of ambitious projects until the deferred maintenance on the neighborhood roads is addressed. The roads are in bad shape. 35th by Emil's, the road is crumbling there. If we're concerned about bicyclist safety, a bicyclist just has to hit that patch of road at night and possibly get pitched into the street. As far as the protected bike lanes, they really make navigating the street a hassle. The predecessors, the civic planners, made Portola a nice wide road to facilitate traffic flow. Unfortunately, I sometimes have to work in downtown San Jose, and they implemented a similar scheme, and it just made navigating downtown San Jose a hassle, and took away much needed parking. So maybe our planners could contact the planners in San Jose and get their feedback and see if it's a success. I don't think the people who commute to downtown San Jose would say it's a success. Maybe the students who ride their bicycles would, but that's their opinion. I would like to see lighted crosswalks at 30th. There's another crosswalk. I think it's in front of the 7-Eleven by the Corner Pocket Bar. I think that's 32nd. I'd like to see a lighted crosswalk there. At 38th and at 41st. I really like the lighted crosswalks. My wife was walking through the intersection at 36th when she was 8 months pregnant, and she almost got run over. So I think the lighted crosswalks are a very valuable addition. One thing I noticed on 38th, when you come out of the El Rancho shopping center and if you want to go across 38th intersection, the brick retaining wall goes all the way to the street. So you have to step into 38th. I'd like to see that retaining wall removed and a short section of crosswalk placed there, so I don't have to step around the brick retaining wall and into the street, possibly in traffic. I don't think roundabouts are a good idea. Americans are not used to roundabouts. It kind of messed up the traffic flow around the wharf, the municipal wharf in Santa Cruz. That's just my opinion. I love landscaping and trees, but the tree planter medians make bicyclists ride closer to traffic. I don't know if that was a good idea. And I really would like to see the 2 lanes in each direction retained on Portola. In the morning, taking my son to school, going towards Capitola, it's quite busy. I just don't think it's a good idea to reduce the capacity on the road. As far as for the long-term vision of the neighborhood, for the infill and the redevelopment of some of these properties, I'd like to see retail on the ground floor and housing on the upper stories, maybe not too high. I think architects call this new urbanism. It have like a varied roof line where it looks like buildings built at a different time, and so it just adds visual interest. And thank you for your time and letting me express my opinions.
Great, thank you for all those pointers. Corinne Hannon, you're next.
Hi, I live on 37th. I am a bike commuter, I'm a recreational cyclist, and I drive a car. I think there's a lot going on this project, and a lot of it I just don't really think is particularly necessary. But I love the 2 lanes with the turning lane in the center. I don't feel any need to make the traffic move faster through our neighborhood for people who are trying to get from Santa Cruz to Aptos. I don't see why we have to sacrifice our safety. People speed, they hit the 4 lanes at 30th if they're coming from Santa Cruz, and it's like a racetrack. And if you're coming down and trying to turn into your avenue street and you have a car back behind you, when you finally are able to cross those 2 lanes of traffic, the person behind you usually punches it because they're so annoyed that they've had to wait for you to turn into your home. And if the delay, as that other speaker said, was 3 minutes coming home from Watsonville, that's nothing. You can spend 15 minutes trying to get through Capitola Village, and yet people do it day after day after day. So I love the 2 lanes with the turning lane. I think what's going on there now is a little bit busy. So it's causing a lot of people to be very confused. And I think if it were done more simply, people would get used to it. And I think that ultimately it would make our whole neighborhood feel more like a neighborhood and a little bit less like a racetrack. I don't see any increase in traffic on 37th, but the cars are still speeding like crazy on 37th. And so I know there's bad behavior in cars, bicyclists, and pedestrians. Any number of roundabouts or anything at 41st is going to do nothing, because every 30 seconds somebody steps off the curb to stroll across the street drinking their latte. And so that's always going to be a backup until there's a light with like the old-fashioned light with the all-way walk sign. Everybody waits, and then the lights go to all-way walk, and everybody can crisscross diagonally and go any way they want. That's going to be the only answer that's going to help traffic there at 41st. I don't think the stop sign at 36 does much of anything except probably back the cars up a little bit more. But I think it's been interesting, and I hope everybody is patient and fills out the survey with an open mind. Thank you.
Great, thank you for all that feedback. M. Baxter, you're up next.
Hi, Manu. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we hear you.
Perfect. Okay, so I'm hoping I can give you some unique insight as someone who's clearly not a local. Having just moved here myself, hailing from England, the land of traffic circles, I think some of the other points made that traffic circles take a long time to get used to. I'm not necessarily sure that a 4-way stop with actual lights wouldn't. It would benefit pedestrians for sure, and it would help improve safety there. My job is a safety professional, and Justin and Karina brought up interesting points about distracted drivers, frustrated drivers. What we're talking about there is human performance indicators, things that make you do something. that you would not normally do or is not intended to be done. I think, so, as mentioned before, with the gentleman who drives the boat or rides takes his boat, there are certain aspects of the design that may encourage unsafe behavior. Myself, I'm a commuter. I drive from where I live just off 41st to my surf breaks, my surfboard. I've changed my route. I actually go a long way around, which is now equally as quick. I also ride a beach cruiser on the roads. I ride a road bike as well for exercise. And I've not had much of an issue on Portola itself. I don't necessarily feel unsafe. I think it was Mr. Phillip that brought out the current state of the roads. I feel that the money could be better spent improving the quality of the sidewalks and the quality of the actual road in the bike lanes, as well as whichever method of protection for the bikers you go with. But I'm interested, as a safety professional, on seeing if there was any leading or lagging indicators, and the data, i.e. what you knew previously about the types of incidents, near misses or injuries that were taking place, and then how and when you would measure the improvements based on what you do.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, thanks for those suggestions. And I will add, since it's come up a couple times now, that part of the impetus for doing this test was actually to prioritize repaving in areas that needed it badly. And that's why we wanted to look to do this test at roughly around the same time, because when we repave, that's an opportunity to also restripe and change the configuration of the road. And so we want to see if there was any if any of that restriping or reorientation would be beneficial. And so we wanted to do this test before undertaking the repaving.
Understood. Thank you, Manny.
Great, thank you. Shirley McKenzie, you're next.
Okay, I'm unmuted. I have a question for you regarding the traffic study. And are you going to be doing the traffic study when school starts back up? Because that is like a huge difference than the summer.
So Russell can jump in, but the traffic study, as far as I understand, we're going to be doing it, one of them next week for the conditions with the pop-up. And then the other one will be, I believe Russell said July 26th, so the week after the pop-up is taken down. Is that correct?
That's correct.
But then you wouldn't really see like how people want to use that street when the school is out, because I personally used to use it all the time when my kids were in school, but they're grown now. And I don't drive down Portola as much as I used to, but I used to go from Del Mar to SoCal High and then back again numerous times a day for various practices. And I'm sure you have plenty of parents that are doing that as well. So that's a lot of people in their cars driving to and from schools.
That's a great consideration, Shirley. And we can look at also doing a traffic count during school. So we have that as a comparison within our baseline count. We would have both summer conditions and school conditions.
Yes, and also I do not live in Pleasure Point. I live behind Del Mar, but I only have two ways to go. It's either go down Portola or go down Bromer. Bromer's already a one lane. For me, it was hard to get across at Corcoran because people do speed. Has there been any thought about like the speed tables that have been placed by J Street Park? They seem to be not so bad to go over.
Yeah. So
are you familiar with those?
Yes, certainly. Yeah, I'm familiar with the speed tables and the ones on near Jade Street Park. On a major thoroughfare like Portola, we really can't put in speed tables because the fire department doesn't. They can damage the fire engines and interfere with the fire department's ability to respond quickly. So it's always a challenge even to get the fire department to agree to putting in the speed tables on a neighborhood street. And I think it would be a non-starter on a major thoroughfare like Portola, which is, other options though that we can look at are narrowing the travel lanes a little bit, so that people slow down just to navigate that.
Because it's right by the library. You can't get it across that easily either. So, and they do have that lighted crosswalk there. So people do need to slow down.
Yeah, we'll continue to look at other ways that we can encourage folks to slow down through that area. I know that there's definitely a problem with people speeding there by the library.
Is it possible for people in my neighborhood to also be notified of things that do impact their daily lives?
Yes, absolutely. You know, our goal is to try to notify as many people as possible. You know, we did put notice of this meeting in the Sentinel, online, through the newsletter, via email and social media. So we're doing everything we can, and we'll continue to make every effort. And certainly when school starts, we'll communicate through the schools as well. If you have any suggestions on ways you'd like to hear about meetings like this, I would love to hear them.
And would we be able to vote on this, or you guys will just take up all the surveys and just decide?
Well, we're going to use all the survey data to determine, you know, what a next step would look like as far as a project and when we might want to undertake that. And we certainly share with the community, again, any proposal before moving forward.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Next up, I have Point Neighbor.
Yeah, are you going to revisit the whole Portola study corridor area? You're going to have more focus groups? Because when that was done, it was done under the radar of the county. There wasn't much publicized, and a lot of developers and realtors got in there to depict their way on what they want Portola to look at. And I don't know if you know, this is a beach neighborhood. This isn't a tourist neighborhood. You're going to put all this development in place, and it's going to impact us. I mean, our street hasn't been paved in almost 20 years. It hasn't been resealed in 20 years. Your director, Matt Machado, keeps telling us there's no money. There's no money. We're tired of hearing that. Like Philip said, you need to do something about the infrastructure of our neighborhood before you let these developers and realtors really change our neighborhood, because that's what's going to happen. They're going to build condos over commercial real estate, and they're going to make money. Look what happened with the lumber yard. Ask those guys. Ask the companies that try to change the lumber yard on 38. They ran into problems with the neighborhood there. And is this how we're doing things now in our community? We're doing surveys that people can't find, surveys that are, you know, not everybody has Facebook, not everybody has Instagram. The county used to mail out mailers. This is no different from how you handled the parking program. The parking program was a survey that was skewed, and this survey is skewed because you either like it, you're neutral, you disagree, you strongly disagree. So I don't think this is how we should be handling things that are going to impact our neighborhood by a survey, by people that have input that don't even live in the neighborhood. I really think you need to realign this focus group and really bring everybody back into the picture. Because the way I see it, they're going to redevelop Portola, and we're going to pay for it. We're going to have streets that flood. Look at our park on 38th Avenue. When's the last time that's been redone? Kids don't even like going to that park anymore, right? Our streets flood, our water table's high, our houses have mold. We have so many problems in this neighborhood in the infrastructure, and we're going to let them redevelop Portola without putting money into our neighborhood first. That's all I've got to say. The traffic sucks. That new thing sucks. I knew that wasn't going to work from the get-go. They talked about putting a roundabout in 41st. I think that would have helped a lot, but they threw that out. So my advice to you, Manu, is to realign that focus group and get the community involved, because I think what's coming is really, really bad for the community, for the neighborhood. This is a beach neighborhood. It's not a tourist neighborhood. Yes, I understand we have tourists that come down and surf, but we're soon going to have tourists come down here to visit, to party, to go out, to stay in Airbnbs all up and down Portola. I mean, this is going to impact our area. So that's all I've got to say.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we'll continue to have an emphasis on actually having meetings with neighbors And can I just ask what street you're actually on? I heard earlier that 35th needed to be repaved badly. And what's your street?
I'm on 25th.
25th. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Luke McLean or McClellan, you're next. I can't quite hear you, Luke. You're unmuted, but for some reason I can't hear you. I don't know if you can hold your phone closer. If you want to try calling in from a.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yep, got you now.
Oh, good Lord. I got kicked off once. I don't know what's going on with this Zoom thing today. Someone had to bail so I could get back on. I would agree with the last person who just spoke about basically, I think there is a fear that this the data is going to be skewed from these polls that right now, as many other people said, they've changed their routes of traffic. I go to work, I work at the hospital, and I don't go Portola anymore. I go up SoCal now. When they take this survey and the traffic study, it's all going to be skewed. And there's a big fear from a lot of people that you're going to get a skewed data and then everyone will think, no, the traffic's not that bad. And we don't know how this is going to, the final decision is going to be made. And I think a lot of us feel in the dark that it's just going to happen. There's not going to be who have lived here. I live on 2-6 and I see the new traffic coming down. We are afraid that this data is just going to be skewed. Someone's going to make a decision and that's going to be how it is. So I've done my own polling just to get people's opinion. And I would say 80% of the people, it is a very negative thing, but we all have a fear that this thing is just going to pass through. And I guess my question is, and I think you might have addressed it, but I just want to hear again, how is this going to be decided? How is our vote? How are we going to know what the final decision is going to be? Because there is a big fear of a lot of people that it's just going to go through, and basically we're going to be a Silicon Valley suburb.
Yeah, as I said, we'll use any data we collect, I mean, including your feedback here tonight, Luke, as well as Point Neighbors and other folks, and use that to design any future iteration of the project and certainly bring that back for more community meetings before we implement any future version. The goal with collecting data is not to obfuscate or make the process confusing. It's really just to try to get as much clarity as possible. We're looking at every source possible, including some of the metrics Joanne collected from next door, and we'll make that data as public as we can.
And so when you say as public as you can, where can we see the results of these surveys? I think that's one of the concerns that some of us have as well.
Yeah, like I said, I'm happy to post it on my website, and we'll discuss a publicity plan with the project team.
Okay.
Supervisor Koenig, can I respond briefly to that?
Sure, Amelia.
I would just say that as this data collection is going forward, if there is less traffic volume moving through Portola, my understanding is that is an indicator that it's not a successful project, that the road is not accommodating all of the traffic that it would have with its normal configuration. So all the folks who are changing their routes, that is a data point that will be looked at, and that's an indicator that the road is not successfully accommodating all of the traffic that it used to. And
but
Russell,
the data wasn't collected before, so how could you know this?
We will collect data during sort of normal conditions after the project. So when conditions have gone back to normal.
That's correct.
Okay.
But yeah, we hear you, and we'll definitely make sure that as Amelia said, the goal is to maintain throughput, and as many cars on the road that need to use it are using it with limited delays.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Next up, I have Maya Zohara. Sorry, Maya, I think I accidentally muted you and trying to ask you to unmute. Maya?
Can you hear me?
Yep, hear you now.
Okay, thank you so much for taking my call. I want to really appreciate your commitment to include the community, and also the fact that the idea to even do a pilot, I wish you had named it a pilot, not a pop-up. I think it would have created an understanding that there was a value for our input rather than something we're supposed to be looking forward to, just a language nerdy point. I have a few questions, a lot of very good comments here that I agree with. Just to identify my demographic, I'm 57 years old. I am an avid biker through that area, an avid runner through that area daily. I do not own a car. I use public transportation. And when I do have the occasion to go through that area with a car, it's via a zip car. So I do about an average of 800 miles a month on my bike through that area, every sunrise, every sunset. And I also run, alternate with running like 7 miles one direction and back from Aptos all the way down to Wilder and back. So I use that area a lot. I am absolutely against the changes that were made. I appreciate the explanation about the visuals and what it might look like. Water Street is amazing and wonderful as a pedestrian and a biker. So if you're moving toward modeling after green and white iconography that's like consistent visual understanding that people have, this is bike lane, this is safety, I'm for that. I'd like to reiterate that I strongly support gaining the public's trust by first making infrastructure improvements in the neighborhoods that we already have. The biggest danger to me as a pedestrian and a biker are the potholes and the broken sidewalks that are in the already neighborhoods. I have a few questions. First of all, did you actually run a first responder or perform a fire drill, a first response fire drill during this pop-up time twice, once during a low traffic time, once during a high traffic time, to actually see if first responders can get through that area with the envision changes you want to make? Second, well, you could answer that. Was there actually a drill? Did police go screaming through there with their sirens and ambulance and fire as if there were a drowning surfer or a car accident? Was that test conducted?
I don't believe so, but Amelia or Russell in the project design, is there anything to account for emergency vehicles, or was there any communication with?
We shared the project designs with EMT, police, and fire, and invited any comments that they had. Fire trucks can run over the wave delineators, so that made them feel comfortable with this temporary test. They could run trucks over them if they needed to.
Yeah, except that you have people there and whatnot. So I would highly encourage, before we do any permanent anything, that they actually run a for real physical material first responder drill while people and cars are there. Second, also, I'm wondering, do you have an age, use, and time demographic data? Meaning, are you asking people, I didn't see any question where you asked for my age, so you know how many school age kids, teens versus older millennials, whatnot. That's important as a data point for input. Use, are you going there to are you commuting? Are you going there to surf? Are you going to buy things? Or on your way for what, work or school? And then time, what time of day is a high usage time? When are you, like I'm sunrise, sunset biking, but during the week, weekends, I'm going through there to shop or get from point A to point B. So I'd highly recommend getting accurate data by having an opportunity for people to identify their age, their use, and their time of day. And also because we've been in COVID, we're not fully re-entry as a community. We also have a configuration that's changing with a lot of people remote working. So already you have compromised data from when you started this to what you're doing right now. And I would delineate the data from a local data versus tourist. And I do think that you have to take into consideration summer and or, you know, high, what do you call it, tourist time data as well, because that affects every other artery. It's an artery point. It affects every other little adjoining community. And it's important, like other people said, you're doing something right now where we're not fully even back to normal travel patterns or habit patterns because of COVID. I would not use any of this data. I would wait until fall where everybody is significantly re-entered from COVID. Also, I wondered, you know, there's a lot of enmeshment here where it's generalized about speed. There's a lot of different ways to approach speed. We have people speeding through SoCal Avenue trying to get, you know, off the freeway when there's a lot of traffic. And I will tell you, when they do speed traps using our police to ticket, and they use awareness where they have the big flashing signs that tell you you're speeding, people slow down. It demonstrates to them that somebody's paying attention. So there's different ways to do that. The last is, I'm wondering, have you put together an actual advisory committee and or, I know you had focus groups, but I mean people that actually have a diverse demographic of use in the area, that can give input, that have you as decision makers not just receive the data, but actually, you know, try getting from point A to point B, where you say for 2 weeks I'm going to walk, or I'm going to give up my car, I'm going to ride my bike. I just think there's a lot of, you end up getting a more in the field experience. But right now, to restore confidence, I would really highly recommend that you start from scratch with your data, because we're in summer, but we're also in COVID, and it just can't be emphasized enough that that's not business as usual in our neighborhoods right now.
Thank you, Maya. Yes, those are all great points, and we appreciate all that feedback from a super user like yourself. Just to your last question there, I don't think we have a project-specific advisory committee. We do have a bicycle advisory committee within the county as a group in the Regional Transportation Commission that we run plans like this by, and we'll ask them all to take a trip through this corridor and give us their feedback as well. But we could certainly look at an advisory committee for the project in the future. Next is Alex Vartan.
Hi, Manu. Thank you. I just had some quick comments and a question for Russell as well. So I live on Portola directly, as you know, near the lagoon. It's really fast down here. I would love to see also upgrades to traffic calming. This stretch is very well traveled by kids. It may not be as obvious closer to where the pop-up was actually done, but tons of kids walk on Portola also. And this is probably the fastest portion of it, right in front of the lagoon. So with regards to the actual pop-up, you know, I support the 4 to 3 lane change. I do think it doesn't. I want to echo like a prior person's comment that you know, it seems like as neighborhood residents, the trade-off of, you know, a little bit of extra backup at only certain times of the day would be well worth reducing the throughput of traffic and the total amount of through traffic that's not even necessarily neighborhood related. People just use this again as another east-west arterial. And so to me, it's not clear why, as neighborhood residents, we even want that. I do think that many some of the issues that people are having with backups or specifically probably may, and this is sort of a comment and question for Russell, be resolved, with the actual formal study and engineering rather than this pop-up, which was just a portion. It's just, to me, it's really not, it's a little unfair to judge it because it is not really representative of what a full, 4 to 3 change would be. So I just sort of want to put that out there so people can just think through that a little bit. I think a traffic circle at 38th probably would ease most of the issues in terms of backups. I would like to think more highly of my countrymen that they can adapt to traffic circles, but maybe that might not be true. So, but I do think a traffic circle and at 38th would work. To be frank, I was expecting backups that were a lot worse. I know certain times of the day it does back up, but I was surprised that how well the traffic balanced out. So I guess I have one final question for Russell. To me, it's always been sort of strange that this stretch, only really a half mile of Portola, is 4 lanes, and both the input and all of the output are all 2 lanes. So, what is, and we all have experience of, both those inputs and outputs. Does this make, what is the history of this, Russell? Does it actually make any sense to have, a small portion like this go from 2 to 4 to 2, or is that just some legacy of poor planning in decades past? I'm just sort of curious about that particular setup.
Yeah, Alex, I don't know the full history of the 2 to 4 on why it's like that. My guess would be it's in more of a commercial area compared to the other parts of Portola, is why it's 4 lanes in that area versus 2 lanes in the other areas. So, but I don't know the full history of that, sorry.
But is that, I guess my question is that a standard? Is it done that way, or was this just sort of done accidentally, I guess is my question.
Yeah,
it seems strange to have just a short stretch, I guess is my only point. But anyway, that's all.
Yeah, I don't know the full history on that.
All right, that's all. Thanks, Manu.
Thanks, Alex. Yeah, and to your other point, we will do an actual traffic study on the flow through this section before making any final changes. Next up, James Ratliff.
Thanks for the opportunity to ask questions. I have 2. First, just trying to understand the baselining that did or did not happen here. Did you guys baseline the pedestrian traffic and the bicycle traffic on Portola, but not the vehicle traffic? Is that how I understand it?
No, if I understand correctly, we haven't actually baselined any of the counts. A count will be done after the study when conditions return to normal and the pop-up is removed. And at that time, vehicle, pedestrian, and bikes would be counted for baseline.
And that'll include the traffic that's diverted off to the avenues off the perpendiculars, correct?
Yeah, we're discussing adding that portion to the counts.
Yeah, okay, good. Because I'm a longtime resident on 35th, been here about 30 years, and seen things kind of come and go. And this was definitely a surprise. I participated in the East Cliff improvements and held the unpopular position that I actually kind of liked it because eventually I would have oceanfront property, which all my neighbors would not still be around me. So I do appreciate the effort in getting some things done. I really kind of question the direction and bias that we see in some of this. And I also, my other question really is how much weight does our input carry here? And the reason I'm asking is I did go back through the 2018 documentation, and I'm thankful that somebody at the county actually scanned in all of the comment cards. And if you look at the comment cards, you see over and over, please don't make Portola 2 lanes. Don't make it 3 lanes. It needs to stay 4 lanes because this is a major thoroughfare. And if we divert the traffic, if we constrict it, it's not going to make the traffic go away. It just makes it find other avenues because we're a surf destination, because we're people traveling across town. I mean, I've been here for 30 years. I avoid the intersection at 41st and Portola on the weekends because I just know it's got a lot of people there. So I'll take 38. My traffic patterns change, and they've already changed with this. So for us to baseline after the fact, I don't think is a very good way to do it. And I think I would just want to reiterate that. It's been stated earlier, and I think it's really important that you get good numbers on all of this. I don't have anything inherently against change. I don't like surprises, as I've stated before on Nextdoor. I'm happy that people are investing time and energy for this. I do see some bias, and I don't particularly appreciate that. But if you're listening, we'll tell you. My concern is, are you really listening, and will this impact the decision in any way?
Yes, James, we are listening. I am listening. And I think just fundamentally, as has been said, we have limited resources. And so both in terms of where we want to spend money and time, certainly for me and my office, if this is a project that people don't want, we're not going to continue to invest time and money into it. And we will look at other projects where people do want that people do want more. And hopefully you got a sense of that in terms of some of the questions we asked in the poll tonight and how we continue to move forward.
Right. Well, so a couple things I do really like. Definitely love the stop sign at 36. Much needed, should have been there a long time ago. I like the idea of very clearly painted bicycle lanes that are, the green things are great. The clown shoe aprons for pedestrians, I think, are going to be a problem. They're too obstructive. They obstruct the turn too much. But there are parts of this that I think are good. So hopefully we'll get some good feedback across the board.
Thank you very much, James. Scott Kennedy, you're next.
Thanks, Manu. My mic on?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Great. So first off, I wanted to thank you again, like others have said, for providing the forum for us to provide feedback. And I just want to say, first off, James was the last speaker. I fully agree with his points. And I'll start off with a couple positives. Specifically the stop sign on 36. Everyone I've talked to, that's sort of across the board. People are in agreement that's a safe thing. I was involved in a head-on collision there by a drunk driver about 6 years ago at that very intersection. So that's a welcome change for me. Some of my demographics for perspective. I'm a homeowner. I'm a resident, Floral Drive. I'm a parent of 2 young kids. I'm also a first responder, so I have that view. I'm also a cyclist as well as a driver. A couple comments on the current situation. I think I share a lot of frustration, like others, with the lack of transparency in the process. I was aware that there was a planning commission, and it all seemed kind of nebulous between the lumberyard development and the Portola sort of business attracting plan or whatever. I forget what the actual name of it was years back. But I feel, and others I've spoken to felt pretty blindsided by the sudden installation of this, and then also shocked at the aesthetics of it. And I'll leave it at that. From a safety perspective, my biggest gripe with it is that these turn lanes, the mandatory turn lanes, right-handers, they funnel more traffic into the quiet point neighborhoods that are, narrow, a lot of intersections that are not signaled or stop sign controlled. We've got, kids out, people on bikes, pedestrians, etc. And as a result of these mandatory turn lanes, I've noticed a significant increase in speeding traffic that ignores stop signs, visitor traffic, and bypass traffic because of people's frustration with the traffic backup on Portola. The lane reductions from the 2-lane and 1-way to a single lane. So at 38th, for example, From my perspective, as a driver, as a pedestrian, as a cyclist, that's dangerous for everyone. It's confusing, it doesn't make any sense, and it creates bottlenecks going in both directions, and it reduces visibility. So, you know, in closing, I kind of wanted to rhetorically ask the question, what the end goal is here. Is it more parking? And more parking for who? Because you just took our parking program away in the county. You took that away from residents. You invited more people to come. Do we need more people in the neighborhood? I think that you'd be hard pressed to find someone on this call or someone you talk to in the neighborhood that thinks we need more visitors. And I'm not saying we need to shoo them away, but we don't necessarily need to roll out a red carpet at the expense of residents and our ability to park, our ability to have vehicles, our ability to have our kids play safely in the street while we have transient visitors who don't necessarily care about our community. And as what the guy who went by Point Neighbor on here, I don't know who it is, but his voice sounds familiar, dead on. Like, do we want a palm tree lined promenade with bars and retail parking with, you know, retail spaces with condos above it for people to just come, like have Santana Row by the sea? That's not what any of us like about the Point. People like it for what it is, and change is inevitable, but we don't need to go the way of most other beach towns in California with developers licking their chops to create this homogenous, just tasteless, but yet new thing that we don't actually need. So I'd encourage you to listen to your constituents, listen to what people have to say, and actually take that in. I share the same concerns as others that our voices aren't being heard. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. I will definitely work to make sure that we actually define a vision for what the goals are here and make it clear how the input will be weighed in that process of what is actually done. Ariana Green, you're next.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you. Hi.
Great. Hi. Thank you for the opportunity to comment on this. I'm a resident of District 1, and I'm also happen to be a transportation professional with experience with pop-ups in Monterey County. And I just wanted to say that I'm very grateful that the county is doing this pop-up demonstration for multiple reasons. I think, first of all, it's a way more democratic way to get community input and to get input from people who don't necessarily live right on the corridor, but use it every day and are affected by it and want to use it in different ways. And some folks commented earlier about skewed data and being worried about skewed data. And I just wanted to say that usually the data is skewed in favor of those who are in opposition of change and those who have time and resources to attend board meetings and city council meetings and things like that, and leaves out folks like me who are busy working professionals and also parents of parent of young children. So I really appreciate this pop-up because it allows people like me to experience a new design and multiple opportunities to do that. So I can go and do it on my own time, and I don't have to show up at a board meeting to give my input. And I really appreciate that. I also really think that we need to have better infrastructure for biking and walking for people of all ages and abilities. And I mean, I used to bike commute along Portola in my younger years before kids. And my perspective has changed now that I have kids, and I don't feel comfortable with them riding alone on a busier street like Portola. I want some sort of protection. I want something a little extra to feel confident that they would make the trip safely. So I really think that we need to, I think we should be prioritizing more projects like this. That said, I think the purpose of the pop-up is not to have a perfect design. It's actually what's happened, which is to start a conversation and get more people interested in talking about transportation, which can be kind of a dry topic. And so I think that in that way, this pop-up has been successful. Obviously, it is not perfect, and there are limitations with doing pop-ups, like the materials that are used are not permanent. So those wave delineators are not going to be there in a permanent installation. And it's also not really possible to demonstrate a roundabout safely for a temporary amount of time. So, but the really important thing is if the city or the county wants to have bigger ticket items like roundabouts, if there's an intersection control evaluation done and it's deemed to be the best solution for that corridor is to have a roundabout, then the best way to get funding from the state and to have an edge in grant applications is to do things like pop-ups and get more community input. So do what you will with the data, but I think that it's really important to do these types of demonstrations to get more perspectives and not just the perspectives of the few who don't want things to change. Thank you.
Thank you, Ariana. Thank you for the perspective. And I agree. I think we've heard from a lot of people both tonight and throughout this process that we wouldn't normally hear from. And for that, I'm very grateful. Next up, Trevor Thorpe.
Hi, Supervisor. Thanks for having me here tonight and having all of us here tonight. I've been a resident on Pleasure Point since the mid 80s. I'll try to make this quick. I'm a proponent of the stop sign at 36. That's a very dangerous intersection. I'm concerned about the, how you remove that after people have experienced it for 6 weeks. That could be problematic. I'm a proponent of highlighting the bike lanes in green. I think that we should be doing that regardless of whether the rest of this project moves forward or not. I'm an opponent of the lane reduction. I think that the stop sign at 36 helps in slowing down the traffic, and it makes me a proponent of the comments earlier by Justin Flood and Mary Scheller that it's the cart before the horse, and so I deem those unnecessary. I'm actually an opponent of having advocacy groups administer a survey. This should have been conducted independently by the county. You just cannot be beyond reproach when an advocacy group is handling and administering the survey. I'm an opponent of uses that are underparked. I think this whole experiment has highlighted the issues that Cat and Cloud created with having substandard parking, especially at that intersection. It's created safety hazards and neighborhood nuisances for the surrounding residents and drivers. So I hope that that is taken into consideration in the future. I'm a proponent of the comments earlier about, focusing on road maintenance and repair on Pleasure Point before we get into new capital projects here. There are just so many problems here on our existing streets that need to be cured. And then I'm also a proponent of what Maya Zahara said earlier, her comments on the changes in circulations and lifestyles since COVID. I think we do need to take that into consideration when you're looking at the 2018 results and updating that report. And then I'd just like to know what the next steps are and how you plan to announce those next steps in advance in order for transparency. That's a big concern. And there are a lot of people that have spoken tonight about not being on social media or online and how you might be able to better communicate that to not only the community, but also the other outside users.
Thank you, Trevor. Thanks for that clear delineation of what you support and oppose about this particular project. As far as the next steps go, we're still figuring them out. And when we do determine the next step, we'll announce it with plenty of time ahead of time and through all means possible, from radio to online, but also in person, and make sure that there's a good amount of lead time there for people to get out and continue to have the community conversation. Next up is EG.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to weigh in. My question is for Russell. It's a technical question. So you've chosen to use the after condition as the week of July 26th. And I think we all know that the implementation was very quiet, and now we've seen some real big traffic changes. And yet the week you take out all of these pop-ups, now all of a sudden you're going to survey. And I think there needs to be a bigger buffer between when things get taken out and people learn that Portola is available again, and you can get the people out of in front of our house on 41st. So just want to throw that out there, that there needs to be more marketing of taking all of this out to get those regional people back onto Portola, or you're going to have very skewed data. And I want to support the person who spoke earlier, and I think it was Maya, about wanting to have additional counts when school's back in session. So please consider those comments.
Yeah, thank you for your comments. We'll definitely take that into account. We'll also have those portable message signs, and we'll put those messages out to let people know that the pop-up is coming down and what date, and so that everyone is aware of when everything will be taken down.
Great.
But that's just for the people who are still around. I think we need to get to the regional commuters, because those are the people that are forcing all of our neighbors to cut through and do the other things. So we need to be very marketing oriented and publicly aware of how we're marketing the fact that it's down, so that we reach everybody who would have used it. And now I'm hearing tonight they're on Soquel, they're on Brom, they're on a bunch of other streets. And we need to get them back to where they agree we didn't get pre-counts.
Thank you, EG. And we'll definitely look at a longer period after the pop-up comes down as well. I think it's a great suggestion. Next up is Eric.
Hey, Manu. So I just wanted to mention a couple of things. One, everyone is now an expert in city planning. Everyone now is an expert in fielding survey, quantitative and qualitative analysis, traffic patterns, and city politics. And I think it's important that we all just give you and give your team just the tiniest little break and a little bit of appreciation for at least trying something. I don't want the response that comes from this experience to deter what could be a better situation. Granted, this one might not be the one, but for God's sakes, like, let's try and make things safer. People talk about safety and it's important for their kids, but they don't see that in Portola. They talk about our neighborhood becoming Silicon Valley. I promise you, an intersection is not creating a Silicon Valley suburb. There's 10 other things that are before that line that make that happen. I don't want this to deter progress that makes sense for the neighbors, for the community. And I think it's just important to remember that you're doing the best you can, your team is doing the best you can. And for God's sakes, man, just like give them a break, give you a break. That's it.
Thanks, Eric. I appreciate that. And I know the other folks on the project team do as well. So thank you. Jason, you're up next.
Hi, Manu. Thanks for putting this together. As a 8-year resident of 30th Ave, Oceanside, also known as Highway 30, I was just curious why some of the Measure D money hasn't been used already for bicycle safety like it has been in other parts of the county. I also see a lot of, and having an 8-year-old child who commutes around the neighborhood together, we tend to use side streets going to and from areas to get to 41st Avenue. Also with bicycle safety and pedestrian safety, there's a lot that could be done on East Cliff. There's a lot of elevation changes on East Cliff for pedestrians. I don't know how many times I've seen elderly walking down East Cliff and tripping, delineating, path of travel on East Cliff would be great. and resurfacing that, and you know, making the putting in green bike lanes. I see a lot of biking going on East Cliff rather than Portola. I mean, who wouldn't want to ride down East Cliff and see what beautiful neighborhood and the Pacific that we live, that surrounds us. I do commend you on trying to put this together and everything. I would like to see some type of public pedestrian safety on 41st and Portola. I commute daily down to Soquel Research Park. A member earlier mentioned diagonal crosswalks. I lived in Waikiki for 4 years and everything. That was lit. That was very popular there and everything. But I just don't see, I see traffic backing up. I do see people taking side roads, turning into alternative roads, and trying to turn from Portola onto 30th. Sometimes now takes longer than it usually does. You know, thanks again for putting this on. I know it's a starting process and everything. Also the park on 38. I mean, my son was raised here, who's born here, you know, utilizing that park hasn't been touched and I don't know when. To see that change for the community and the neighborhood kids would be great. Basketball court, something or another. But thank you again, and appreciate you putting this on.
Thank you, Jason. And just a point on the park on 38th and Floral there. We are actually, a capital campaign is being started now by county park friends to raise some funds to improve that park. So we are planning.
Oh, great. Awesome. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And definitely we're aware that we need some updates on East Cliff as well. And so we'll be looking at that. Stacy, you're next.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we hear you.
Oh, great. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I live about a block away from Portola. I live at the end of 35th. And anyway, I want to start off by thank you very much. I'm very grateful for the flashing pedestrian crosswalk that has been put up there on Portola. I'm a mom, and I just can't thank you enough for that. So I appreciate it. As far as the other changes to Portola Road, I'm just not a fan. I feel that it's just become kind of more narrow. I feel like it's confusing with all the markings, and I'm afraid it can cause that can actually cause an accident. I feel that with those white metal guards for bicycle safety, that it just kind of makes you feel closed in, and I'm just not a fan. And I guess that's pretty much it. I really appreciate the opportunity to get feedback from myself, that you're giving folks like myself the opportunity to speak on the project, because we're the ones that live in Pleasure Point. I totally agree with the Point neighbor and with Scott Kennedy on their views. I don't want to see our area turned into Silicon Valley or whatever. And I know that another person had said, well, you know, it won't be like that. Well, you never know. Sometimes it's things like this. These projects start, and then, you know, who knows what happens after that. This is a little bit slightly off the subject, but I'm concerned about Capitola Mall. I don't want it to be a crazy high-rise building or God knows what, and to ruin our little charm that we have there in the Point. So anyway, that's what I have to say. I thank you for trying, but I really hope that the pop-up comes down. But please do leave the flashing crosswalk. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Stacy. Yes, the flashing crosswalk will definitely stay, and thanks for the comments. And Simeon, I believe you are our last comment question this evening.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Awesome. So, I mean, I to start off, I have a lot of respect for people who can come and take the heat of a panel with opposing ideas to maybe what they had initially. That must be like, I can't even understand that, right? From going from there, I don't really understand why, like, my government didn't initialize a baseline or didn't have a baseline to start with. And now we're expecting to get a baseline after the project. I'm not a scientist by any means, but this scientific process is pretty simple. You have to have something to measure against initially. That's the biggest thing, right? And that doesn't instill confidence in my government's ability to make decisions if they don't have a baseline for the decision. It doesn't make sense. My favorite part of the changes is the stop sign on 36. It grew on me. Okay, I admit it. Now I would like to note that flashing sign, the pedestrian sign on, 36, was there initially. It was removed once the temporary things were put in and recently got put back. So that was there originally and it got removed for some reason. I just wanted to point that out. Additionally, people keep talking about roundabouts on 41st, and I think that is a horrible idea because roundabouts do not accommodate for people. Stop lights accommodate for people. And it's just a clarification. It's nothing crazy. Obviously that intersection is just a mess. Like, we all know it, but a roundabout is just not a good idea in my opinion. If there's pedestrians, there's going to be a load of pedestrians walking all over that intersection because there is right now. So I think we should refrain from any kind of roundabout because for a lot of reasons. But I'm all for something to limit the madness on 41st because people don't understand right away for some reason. That's kind of all I have.
Great, thanks for that feedback. I agree we should have collected a baseline beforehand and we'll do a reading afterwards as far out as we need to make sure that things have returned to normal. John Dawson, I see you slipped in here with one more question, so go ahead. And
yeah, I'd just like to say, going back to the part about how maybe none of us in this forum are expert city planners or traffic analysts. There are at least 2 experts in big data, and this forum has made it clear that the data collection has been farcical. That is all.
Okay, thank you, John. And Tyler?
Yeah, hi. My name is Tyler. I'm in my 30s. Lived on the point my whole life, and I'm a father. I'm also public service. So my biggest concern is that we are going to lose this stop sign at some point. I live on 35th on the other side of Portola, and we walk my son every single day there. We were driving to the other side of Portola because it was so dangerous, and then parking near Cotton Cloud, and then walking to the point. So when the flashing sign came in, then we started walking from our house. And now that there's a stop sign, we feel totally safe to walk from our house to the point. And my biggest concern is that this stop sign is going to leave and it's going to create confusion for drivers, and it's going to actually make it less safe than it was initially. So the rest of the project, I'm not a huge fan of, but that stop sign has been like the best thing that's happened for us in the community for a long time. So thank you very much for your time. And if there's anything we could do to keep that stop sign, I'm in.
Great. All right, I hear you loud and clear, Tyler. The flashing crosswalk will not go away, and we'll discuss options to get that the other stop sign, or the stop sign, I should say, in there as soon as possible.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
And I saw one more hand raised, but it seems to be gone now. If anyone else wants to ask a question, Now's your chance. And seeing none, I'll bring us to a close. Thank you everyone who came out tonight. I know there's just no other way to get a sense of what's working and not working about a project so much as actually hearing from you all in the community that are using it every day. So I know this has been extremely valuable for me, and I'm sure the rest of the project team feels the same way. We've learned a lot about what's working and not working with the pop-up, and we're going to be putting our heads together to collect a final round of data, as Russell explained, in terms of some of the traffic counts, and determine what next steps are, and also how we'll publicize the data and next steps in the process so that we can engage as many people as possible in the ongoing conversation. So thank you everyone for coming out tonight. We've recorded the meeting and we'll be posting it for you to share with any of your friends and neighbors who weren't able to come out tonight. Thanks again and have a good night.